Shift Happens podcast.
When it comes to tackling a big problem or challenge, there's nothing like a trusted partner on your side. It's why many organizations turned to managed service providers during the pandemic to deploy new tools for remote work and to protect their users and data. But there's a lot more opportunities for MSPs to grow and sustain these important relationships. My guest today is John Doucette, Executive Director of U.S. Cloud Services for Ingram Micro Cloud. He'll explain why the MSP is an increasingly valuable resource as we continue to navigate the world of hybrid work and new ways to add value and revenue. Let's get to it.
Shift Happens podcast. Shift Happens podcast.
So we talked about how the world has changed, and certainly in all facets, all industries, all areas. And just want to catch up and hear from you and share with our listeners on what's the big transformation that's going on in your world. You see, some of our listeners, first and foremost, may not work or be familiar with companies partnering with an MSP, but others may be familiar. So maybe let's just do a quick level set here and backgrounder on your industry, what MSPs are about, and what's going on in the last 2 years.
Yeah. And I think the last couple of years, the business that we're in, managed service providers in the IT space, has really been highlighted. So back a little bit of background, right? So first, Ingram Micro and Ingram Micro Cloud, the business that I'm responsible for, is well known to people that are in the IT channel. But in the IT channel, we work with the tech companies and the suppliers and resellers that are out there solving problems for end customers every day. But if you're an end customer consumer of technology, you may not know Ingram Micro. And so I like to explain that we're kind of the company that brings together the innovators, the Microsofts and the Ciscos and the AWSs and the AvePoints, right? We bring them together with the problem solvers, right? The problem solvers are the IT providers and managed service providers that companies come to know as the ones that are kind of solving those on the ground IT challenges for them. So I mentioned managed service providers, MSPs. MSPs are a growing community of IT service providers to end businesses. And large enterprises, they often turn to an MSP maybe for their deep expertise in a particular area or to provide some agility or scale. And smaller companies turn to MSPs very often just as a way to outsource their IT function altogether. And that's been an industry that I've been in and served and been part of for a couple of decades. It's been growing. And recently it's become really important as end businesses are looking for ways to kind of deal with rapid change, scale, and in particular, move to the cloud. So there's a little bit about kind of MSPs, where they've gone and where they are today.
So John, let's unpack that, especially for a lot of our audience. So when you talk about large companies, so I would say, like the US government or big banks, typically they would have their own IT,
right?
But maybe for newer technologies or newer innovations they're looking at, which they may not have skill sets, they may tap on MSPs, right? That's one scenario.
Exactly.
And then for what you describe as smaller organizations, so I think about like the local business I work with. There's a local dental practice. They're quite big in this area, but I do know they don't have their own IT, right? But they use technology. So in that scenario, they don't have their own IT department. So they would work with an MSP to fulfill all their IT needs. Is that correct?
It's exactly right. And it's exactly the way I like to explain it to people, right? And that's the beauty of these companies, these MSPs that are emerging and finding more and more importance, and they're finding success in the market. It's because those two scenarios you just provided, right? They typically bring deep expertise in a couple of areas that can really help a company move faster or adopt something that they need inside their business. And as you said, smaller businesses, and I use examples of everything from a school district to a local medical office. Those are the types of people that often say, I would just like to have someone come in and run all of this for me. And there is an adage that I learned, maybe 20 years ago, and I still love it today, which is a lot of companies turn to an MSP because first they recognize that it can be less expensive than doing it themselves and maybe a better use of capital expense, right? So that can be the first. But the customers that are using MSPs that are really successful in doing it realize that the MSP brings them agility, the ability to kind of make changes faster, and gives them scale. And those types of things, if you're an M business, those create competitive advantage. They create better employee experience. All of those things. So it's not just about saving money. It's actually about helping your business grow. And you can tell I like this space. It's a space I've been in a long time. I love helping businesses find ways to improve.
Absolutely. And as a business too, right? You want to focus on your core competency and core expertise. Like you said, the local medical facility, that's their expertise, and just get experts to help them with IT. And then I guess what you're describing where you come in is you help MSPs across the board, right? So if I'm an MSP, I'm like, okay, I'm providing this service to this end customer, but I want to use other technologies, other capabilities to augment and complete my portfolio of offerings. That's where I work with Ingram.
That's right. Yeah. MSPs and IT resellers are running a business that's all focused on their end customers, as they should, right? And I think actually there's a lot to unpack in what's happening in how MSPs are serving customers. But given the fact that that's what they want to focus on, they turn to Ingram Micro, they turn to my team to effectively give them a portfolio of solutions they can tap into. They don't have to be a deep expert in every, big high-tech company that's out there. They can be expert in a few and turn to us to help them in a couple of gap areas. And for the small MSPs, I try to describe this sometimes, for example, to my kids, right? Like sometimes a small MSP just doesn't have the ability to get the attention of a big tech company, right? So we help them, right? We help them do that. And even if you're a big MSP, sometimes you simply say, I'd rather partner with somebody else to help me do these kinds of things. So that's what we do for MSPs all day. We connect the innovators, who are the tech companies, with the problem solvers, which are the MSPs.
Boy, I wish I would have known about Ingram back in the late 90s. I started my own little MSP business. I tried calling Microsoft. They don't want to talk to me because I was a two-person shop. But hey, we're working together now.
You are.
So you described that there's an unprecedented transformation that happened in the last 2 years. You talked about companies, large or small, moving to the cloud. So what are some of the things you've seen with MSPs and perhaps some of the challenges that they've encountered with this cloud adoption and cloud transformation?
Yeah. Well, the IT industry and IT providers came front and center, in early 2020 when, the world suddenly had to deal with coronavirus, right? And they became front and center because people were looking to go solve problems inside their business. And MSPs in particular, those IT companies that were already in a position, in a mode of helping do it where they brought in expertise and services to help a company. They weren't just selling them a product. They were really coming in and helping solve problems. They were in high demand. And the demand was, and the one example that we all talk about is the ability to take all of the workers and help them work remote, right? So in a matter of days, and even my own organization was a good example of this. And I was so proud of what we accomplished. I mean, we sent 2,000 people all home within a matter of a couple of days with what they needed to be productive, right? So a laptop, a video conferencing tool, a VPN maybe, and they were off and running. MSPs all over the world had to do that for their customers. And I think largely we look back on it and say, man, what a great success story that we were able to help so many companies be able to achieve that. It took time. It wasn't without some challenges along the way, but really, really great success. And it showed the importance of it. And cloud was front and center because it was that scalable, easy to deploy solution that allowed people to continue operating their businesses and serve their customers, et cetera, et cetera. In fact, the case studies and success stories are starting now to come out as people talk about it. And you featured one on one of your Shift Happens podcasts last year that people should go back and listen to, right? Which was the government down in Tasmania, the Davenport.
Yes.
What a great example of an organization that had to pivot, right? And they were working with a cloud provider that allowed them to do it just like that.
I mean, John, you hit the nail on the head, right? Because a lot of times we don't think about this until this big shift that happened where, especially a lot of organizations, be it large or small, I think about government organizations, for example, where they're used to going to the office, working in the office, and then going home. even smaller organizations in retail may not have remote working capabilities. And I can say between in-house IT and MSPs, they're the unsung heroes, frankly, right? Like, I'm not diminishing the credit that we give a lot of our frontline workers, our medical workers during the pandemic, but I would say IT in general, broadly, has done a lot to keep the lights on, essentially, of our global economy.
I very much agree, and I think we all just we humbly understand that like we're just a part of us all trying to adjust with this global pandemic. It is, and I remain optimistic because we're solving problems, and I love being on that side of things. But fully recognize there's a lot of problems yet still to be solved.
So with this massive adoption of the cloud, what trends are you seeing through your MSPs that customers are embracing with respect to technology? Is it just all about being able to do calls like this? Or are you seeing people working more together beyond email? So can you share some proof points or stats that you're seeing?
So I think the way you maybe set it up is the right way to think about it, which was there was the changes that were about the ability for people to work remote, and the ability for people to have conversations like this remotely, right? And I think the initial challenge was just all about the sheer volume of what it was. What's happened, I think, is that the challenge has shifted, and it's really now about what I call the sustainability of those changes that we've made. And sustainability isn't just about keeping what we have, but it's the evolution and ability to make change something that we can continue to adopt inside of organizations. So I'll give you an example to make the point, which is, as you know, thousands of companies and millions of workers all went home to work remote, right? It was a huge feat. We talked about it. Laptop video conferencing, like MS Teams, and hopefully a VPN, right? And then after they got through that wave, they all of a sudden realized they needed a way to secure all those workers and their data, right? And then they needed to be able to manage and optimize maybe the expenses related to this new infrastructure that they had just created. And so effectively what happens is end customers and their MSPs went right on to the next challenge, which is how do we adopt a whole new playbook for policies and governance and management? And to me, that was that next big challenge, which we're still in the midst of, and MSPs are solving for customers every day, right? Which is, okay, let's create a new playbook for how you, again, manage security and how you manage policies and how you manage your operations, if you will. The second big challenge that I've observed is about the consumption of the technology that's out there, right? And maybe this is a little bit more about the MSPs helping end customers, but it's this idea that you want the customers, they may have adopted a technology for that single use case, that first thing that they had to go get done, but the MSPs more and more are really trying to help customers fully take advantage of the technology that they've deployed, whether it's all the features that are there or whether it's the evolution from just performing a function to the overall productivity and well-being of their employees that are now working remote. So think of that more like adoption and change management and what I call customer success. How do you drive customer success? And you mentioned, like a data point. I'll share with you. My team, Ingram Microcloud, just completed another study that we refer to as the State of the Cloud Channel. We completed that study, published it recently. We surveyed 1,100 MSPs in the US market, and it's very clear that the vast majority of them are increasing their investments in this area, which is customer success. So they realize they've helped other customers get remote and start using the cloud, but that's not enough. They really have to help those end customers use all of the tools that are available to them.
I mean, you painted the picture nicely because we're seeing the very same thing, right? When you talk about sustainability, we work with other partners in MSP as well. We talk about this idea of how do you drive sustainable adoption?
Right.
And while it's a challenge for the end customer, it's a great opportunity for MSPs to introduce new lines of businesses and services. Because as you know, a lot of our MSP partners in the past that we work with, there's so much opportunities. For example, okay, let's move customers to the cloud. So there's the migration bit of moving data, but also enabling them with things like Teams or Zoom, like you described. So that's step one. We've moved people there. So now people are getting used to it. They're working. But now, how do we help them maximize their investment with Microsoft 365 or other technologies?
Exactly.
The MSPs can come in with what you describe as service offerings about driving adoption. It could be a simple one-day training or a show and tell or little videos. And at the same time, in light of the adoption, also, there's things like data breaches or ransomware that's happening, which you also raised around, okay, how do we secure collaboration? And that's a lot of the traction we're seeing around working with MSPs, helping them develop packages on making sure their customers do the right thing and they're safe and they're secure, automating governance and making sure the right policies are in there. So little things, right? Like, for example, we had a recent case study with a MSP we work with in New Zealand, and they have an offering now where ensuring that their customers, when they share documents, for example, it's as simple as that, right? I share my Word document with marketing or a customer outside. Through time, I don't remember what I've shared or who I shared it with. Or even if I shared it with John, John may have shared with another person, which I have no clue. And generally speaking, nobody's malicious about it. But again, there may be a risk. So what this MSP did is through a technology called Policies and Insights, offered a capability so that the end user or the content owner would know who shared what, when it was shared, or even revoked the sharing. So that's another service that MSPs can offer. So long story short, during this time of great shift and great change, new opportunities abound for MSPs to provide new services and offering.
I love that example. It's a really good example because, and it's a good example, I think, that MSPs can wrap their head around, because I would argue that the vast majority of end customers don't understand that can be solved for. The end customer doesn't, I mean, they may understand the problem, but they don't think about how to solve it. But if an MSP has that expertise on their team, and if they don't, they turn to my team or your team, and we help them get that. They can bring an idea like that to a customer that would say, "That's brilliant. I love it." Right? Let me give you the. I like to say this, that there's a other side of this decision to go and help customers adopt it. And it's the not good side, which is if you're not doing it for your customers, if the MSP isn't helping the end customer fully adopt the technology and solve the next problem, the data is there. Those customers, first, they end up looking at this like it's just a transactional relationship and I'm just buying a product from you. And so that becomes, not very value add. And secondly, those customers tend to go look for somebody else to solve their problem. And so MSPs should look at it the way you did, and also be aware if they're not thinking about customer success, there's some risks that they have inside their business. So it's the reason why every opportunity I get, I talk about customer success. It's going to be the key to the long-term adoption of the great technology that we have.
And today, I think another big shift, at least from a business model and the mindset, MSPs today is in IT as well, which is exciting, is not that back of the office, keeping the lights on, patching servers every Tuesday, right? Because of the cloud, technologists like us are now business partners. We're not just taking orders and say, hey, make sure data is backed up, but we can be front and center, ideate solutions and say, hey, this is a better way to do it that can help grow your business, minimize risks, et cetera, et cetera. And that, for me, is the exciting part.
Totally agree. Like I said, I enjoy that part of our overall industry, is that what we're doing is we're solving problems for businesses, right? Helping them serve their customer better, helping them grow their business, helping them serve their employees better. So these are the things that are fun about what we do. And so, like you said, this is why we're a business partner, not just someone that's providing a product.
Now, speaking about risk, you read a great LinkedIn article on ransomware. You broke it down, you talk about the threats, and you talk about doing nothing is not an option. So friends, if you haven't read that article, it's in the show notes, or look John up, read that. It's awesome. But along that same lines, the threat of ransomware is just growing. We did a global MSP survey. Over half of the MSPs said their end customers experience ransomware attack. So first of all, what are your thoughts on the uptick? And more importantly, what can MSPs do to make sure they protect their customers from these ransomware risks?
Yeah, I mean, that probably could be a whole Shift Happens podcast unto itself, right? I think it's fair to say that when we talk within the channel, within the IT industry, people understand ransomware. And also, I think the amount of headline news that there is around ransomware means that more and more end customers are becoming aware of it. But I still think there's a tremendous amount of education that needs to happen at the end customer level around ransomware. And I find that all the time, because when I'm talking with a technology partner, we quickly talk about what we got to go solve for, not what the problem is. But as they're talking to their customers, about what the problem is, trying to describe to them kind of the profile of the risk, the amount of space that they have potentially exposed to this, the different ways that threats can come into the organization, the impacts of ransomware, et cetera. So what I would say, and I know this is going to sound a little fundamental, is I think we're still very much in the education phase, and we just need to move. We need to move quickly, not within the channel, but with our customers, right? We need to be out having conversation, providing them paths, explaining to them that do nothing isn't an option. This isn't all about the fear of it. There's also this idea that you are protecting yourself against some risk that's kind of real in the business. You're making your employees feel more comfortable. You're certainly making your shareholders feel more comfortable because you're preventing some of those risks. So I actually think that the big step right now is education and taking those first couple of steps, which is part of the reason why I put that post out, which is to say we've got to start having those conversations.
And I'm sure as an organization, you have resources that you can help equip MSPs with those conversations, right, John?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's just it, right? When the customer turns to the MSP, or the MSP finds a customer that says, yes, I need a solution here. Here's what it is. I need to either protect what I already have in the cloud, or I need something that protects what I have on-prem and in the cloud, et cetera. We've got those solutions, and we can quickly educate an MSP on what those solutions are and how to address them.
And I think in this day and age, that's a critical role of an MSP, being a partner, right? Because one, the world is changing so fast. Two, technology is just changing so fast. I mean, just look at Microsoft 365. I feel like every 2 weeks there's a new capability. And it's just trying to keep up on behalf of your customers, but more importantly, provide guidance on what could be valuable for them. There may be a new feature or new capability that may not be meaningful to one customer, but it may be very useful to another. So I think that's where the role of MSPs are becoming much more critical.
I totally agree. And what I love is we've got a large community of MSPs that we work with, thousands, right? And I get to spend a lot of time with them, and I'm always so impressed and enthused when I see the number of them that are actually thinking about this in a way that they're out educating their customers every day. There are many MSPs that partner with us to put on like monthly webinars and podcasts for their own end customers, right? And they're using that to do just what you said, which is, hey, in the last month, these couple of companies just released new capabilities. And Microsoft is a great example of that, because of how present M365 is all across business, that you can be just constantly educating your customers on that. So think of it as this combination of, you're trying to generate awareness, you're trying to add value if you're an MSP, and you're ensuring customer success. So what a great way to bring together three different things we just talked about, because at the end of the day, if the MSP is focused on their customer adopting these tools, customer is successful, the customer credits the MSP with their success.
I mean, look, the example I use is people don't want to be sold to, but people want to buy, right? So the example is, I don't know if you had this experience. I hate going to a used car dealer lot because I feel like I'm being sold to. But I listen to Elon Musk all the time. I want to buy a Tesla, right?
Yes.
And in fact, I spend more money with Elon Musk. Not that I have a Tesla, but hopefully in the future. But that's the same idea. You educate people, you show the value. And it's not necessarily just selling all the time.
Yeah. Education is a big part of it, right? And I think that's where MSPs have a great advantage, because they can be a subject matter expert in something that the average end customer just doesn't have the time to be an expert in.
So we kind of tapped into a lot of these opportunities, but if you can boil it down, John, what are some of the untapped opportunities for MSPs today to expand their business and build value for their customers? If you could just highlight a couple.
Yeah, so it's interesting because we spent a lot of time thinking about this, because our mission is to help MSPs and IT resellers be successful. So we think a lot about just what you asked, right? Which is, what are the big things that we asked them to focus on? I think that there's three things, and they're fairly connected, but we've been on this message now, I think, certainly since the beginning of the pandemic, right? And we kind of talked about each one of them. First, we really want to make sure that MSPs are balancing the amount of energy and time they put into customer acquisition with customer success. And so really what that boils down to is investing in and building out customer success inside the MSP organization. And I described that a little bit, right? It's this deliberate focus on helping a customer fully adopt and utilize the technologies and services that the MSP is providing. That's so important for the MSP to get the lifetime value out of a customer that they've obviously put some energy into acquiring that customer. It is really the essence of a successful business model for an MSP and a successful end customer. So one, customer success. Two, as you think about moving into the cloud business or expanding, if you're already doing some of this business, one of the pieces of advice we say is think of these things, the services and the cloud services that you're going to provide as an extension of the core competencies that have gotten you to the success you've seen so far. So maybe you are a company that really focused on collaboration and communication tools, right? So really think about building a practice inside your business. Or maybe you were focused on security and now you're focused on cybersecurity. So there are 4 big practice areas we see emerging, and we encourage MSPs to understand how they differentiate themselves. Those are cybersecurity, collaboration and communication, business applications, which are very much about moving out into the line of business, to having those line of business conversations, and then infrastructure, right? So we encourage MSPs to be thoughtful and deliberate about building those practice areas because they become an extension of what's driven them to be successful as where they are today. The last piece of advice that we give to an MSP comes right from that State of the Cloud Channel survey that I mentioned a little while ago. It is still true today that there are many MSPs that are operating without really a deliberate sales and marketing plan. And those that do see an immediate difference in the way that they execute and the success that they see. So a lot of what my team does actually is helping MSPs build a sales and marketing plan for the businesses that they're focused on in the cloud. I know it sounds fundamental, but we just want to help people say, let's set a vision for your business. If your vision for your business is to take half your customers to the cloud this year, because that might be the case, right? I've got 100 end customers. I want to get half of them into the cloud this year. Let's write a plan for that. Let's help you get there.
And that's part of the education, which is very important.
Yeah. So those are the 3 things that we pretty consistently are out there encouraging partners on.
Well, John, we could go on, and maybe we'll do another episode in the future. But before you wrap up, for Ingram Micro as an organization, how's Ingram Micro making shift happen in this new year? What are your biggest goals or in your organization's to-do list?
Yeah, well, I mean, 2022 is yet another kind of exciting year for us. What a great time for you and I to be talking, because we're coming off of everything that we've seen in terms of helping the market. Here's the interesting thing, and I get the chance to talk to my team about this a lot. The beauty of it is we don't see that the strategy that we have has to change. And so the things that we are doing today for our community of MSPs and IT resellers will continue to be the things that we focus on. So it's, again, helping them build customer success in their business, fueling those practice areas, helping them with their business plan. So that's it. For us as an organization, what I'm excited to say is we're coming off of such a good year that our investments in growing our business this year are going to be pretty significant. So we announced in December the opening of a big office in Miami, opening an office in Scottsdale, Arizona as well, adding a ton of deep experts in technology, sales, and marketing inside the business. So our organization is going to be focused this year on that expansion so we can serve more partners and MSPs in the market. The strategy doesn't change because it's proved to be the right one, but it's about us doing more of that for more of our partners.
Well, fantastic. John, it's really great to hear from you and great to connect. And hopefully we get to see each other sometime this year.
I hope so. You've got a personal invitation to join us at Cloud Summit, right? It's 4 months away. So I think we've seen a couple of recent big industry events show us how you can get back to some in-person events. I think about reInvent. I think about CES. So we were seeing some ways to do it. So right now we remain optimistic. We'll have the channel together to talk cloud. We'll have innovators like AvePoint there to talk cloud at the Cloud Summit, May 17th through 19th in Miami Beach. And I hope that I'll see you there.
Fantastic. I'll be there. Thank you. And everybody, thank you for listening. Until the next episode, we'll see you. Take care and be safe.
Shift Happens Podcast.
Thanks for listening. As John said, the past 2 years have proven that big change is possible and that we must also be prepared for the unexpected. With right guidance from resources like Ingram Micro Cloud, MSPs can identify and deploy the right solutions to deliver security, collaboration, business applications, and infrastructure. There's a deeper lesson here. Even if you're not an MSP, always make sure you're working to maximize the success of existing customers in addition to pursuing new ones. That's what true partnership is all about. I encourage you to check out Ingram Micro's State of the Channel report for more insights. If you like today's episode, please leave a review for the Shift Happens podcast on Apple Podcasts or whatever platform you use to listen. We'll see you next time.
Shift Happens Podcast. Shift Happens Podcast.